Energy is the capacity to do work, and thermodynamics is the study of energy and energy transfer. And when talking about energy, systems refer to the matter relevant to energy transfer, and any matter outside of this system is called the surroundings. For example, a boiling pot of water consists of a system of a pot of water and a stove, but this is an open system, as much of the heat is coming from water that is lost to the surrounding air. Okay, this is getting really hot.
A few moments later.
Closed systems contain all energy and matter contained within the system with no influence from the surroundings. Living systems are open systems as we exchange energy with our surroundings all the time. When you consume food, you use some of it to help make ATP and provide nutrients for biological processes. But much of the energy that is from this food is lost as heat. So when a lizard basks on an object, the object absorbs sunlight and transfers it as heat. Some of that heat is transferred to the lizard while the rest dissipate into the surrounding air. The lizard, object, and sunlight are all involved in the transfer of energy. But exposure to space and air causes only a fraction of the original sunlight to go to the lizard itself. To help understand how energy works in a physical environment such as ours, we need to review the two laws of thermodynamics. These two laws of thermodynamics are as follows. 1. Energy is neither created nor destroyed, only transferred from one form to another. And number 2, in every energy transfer, there is a loss of usable energy. That is, energy that cannot perform work. You see, the universe since the Big Bang has contained the same amount of energy as it does today, considering that the mass of the universe began the size of a quantum particle, which is much, much smaller than the subatomic particles we see in atoms. This mass contained an exorbitant amount of energy that allowed for the universe to expand and currently expand today. Applying the first law can be seen in plants as light energy is converted into chemical energy. Chemical energy is energy formed in chemical bonds, and this is how photosynthesis works. However, when the chemical bond that breaks ATP into ADP and phosphate releases energy, it becomes kinetic, or energy of motion, to help move a cellular component. The problem with energy transfer is that it becomes less efficient over time. The second law of thermodynamics leads to a concept called entropy, or a state of more disorder in a system. And as energy levels drop, matter becomes more disordered. The reason why we as living things require lots of energy is because we are highly ordered, but eventually we will succumb to entropy in the end.
But don't fret. A carbon atom or water molecule inside you may have once been part of or went through a dinosaur. You see, entropy and the constant energy influx in our lives and ecosystems maintains this great circle of life.
When discussing energy, we need to mention potential and kinetic energy. Potential energy is stored energy. It has the potential to do work, but is now incapable of performing work. But an object with potential energy will remain motionless until an outside force acts upon it. It will then convert the potential energy into kinetic energy. Kinetic energy is energy of motion. The hydrogen and helium stored in the sun is potential energy. And as these combust, they are converted to kinetic energy in the form of light. Plants gather this light energy to form chemical bonds of glucose, which then stores that kinetic light energy into potential chemical energy. And when we consume the sugars of plants, that stored chemical energy will then be used to make ATP, which will relay into kinetic energy to power the things that we do, such as providing energy to get this toy car to go.
Right now, the potential energy stored in the muscles of this child is getting ready to use kinetic energy to pull back the trigger. The trigger now has potential energy. When you go to push the button, the potential becomes kinetic, which pushes the car down the track and around the loop-de-loop. And essentially, if you think about it, all of this came from the sun's energy at some point.
Energy is not just a matter of where an object is located, it also has to do with the object's molecular structure. And this structural potential energy is found in chemical bonds holding atoms together. In atoms, electrons furthest from its nucleus have more potential energy. And this is why hydrocarbon bonds have more energy than carbon-oxygen bonds. Methane is one of the simplest organic molecules, containing one carbon bonded to 4 hydrogens. Methane is made of nonpolar covalent bonds, meaning the electrons are pulled evenly in a tug of war between the carbon and hydrogens, and due to this, the electrons gain more potential energy. Water virtually has no energy because it contains polar covalent bonds, causing the electrons to be pulled from the hydrogen towards the oxygen. And because the electrons are closer to the oxygen's nucleus, there is less potential energy. When molecules are broken down, the electrons that hold the bonds together are released, releasing the stored energy within and converting it to kinetic energy. The energy that is released in one reaction and transferred to another reaction to do work is called free energy. Remember, heat represents energy that is not usable. Free energy is a measurement of usable energy in a reaction. Exergonic reactions release free energy, but the reactants are not available for the products as they become more disordered and unusable. Endergonic reactions absorb or adds energy to chemical bonds because free energy from reactants is now stored in the products, thus building bigger molecules needed for cells. Exergonic reactions do require an input of energy to perform, but the payoff of more available energy to perform work is worth it. The energy needed to start a chemical reaction is called activation energy. In order to release this free energy in chemical bonds, you need a small amount of energy to physically break these chemical bonds, allowing the electrons to be free. But breaking these bonds requires molecules, mostly enzymes, to be reshaped, and this is called the transition state. Once the chemical bond is broken, there is an energy that is released that is higher than the energy needed to reshape the enzyme. After the bonds are broken, the enzyme goes back to its original shape. This graph depicts how an exergonic and endergonic reaction uses energy during the transition state. The hump represents the transition state. In exergonic reactions, an input of activation energy causes a release of energy, but note how the activation energy is lowered with the input of the enzyme. The physical reshaping of the enzyme causes the electrons bonded to each other to be so far apart from one another they no longer remain bonded and the molecule splits. Though this example is spontaneous, it would have required more activation energy without the aid of an enzyme. In endergonic reactions, an input of activation energy causes a molecule that stores energy to form. None of this can occur without the help of enzymes. And so, for our next video, we will explore these amazing protein catalysts that make living things a possibility.